Catastrophic flooding in Slovenia claims lives and destroys homes and land.
Rescue teams are still looking for survivors of last week's devastating landslide in Georgia that killed at least 18 people.
President Volodymyr Zelensky hails Ukraine's Air Force against Russia, while strikes continue in the south and peace talks in Jeddah draw to a close.
As the deadline for coup leaders in Niger to restore democracy passes, military leaders close the country's airspace.
A close shave for England in the Women's World Cup, but they advanced to the quarter-finals after beating Nigeria 4-2 in a penalty shootout.
Catastrophic floods in Slovenia have been described as the worst disaster in the country's modern history. At least 4 people have lost their lives and damage to property is estimated to be over 500 million euros. According to the government, huge parts of the country have been hit by the flooding.
Škoda je nepredstavljiva. Praktično 2/3 Slovenije je tako ali drugače prizadetih in napori, zato da bomo lahko spet omogočili normalno življenje, bojo zelo veliki.
In neighbouring Austria, at least 1 victim has been reported. 2 people fell into a river off an eroded bank in Carinthia, but only 1 of them could be saved. Half of the Carinthia region has been affected by flash floods since Friday, and emergency services responded to numerous calls for rescue and evacuation. Meanwhile, firefighters in the Pyrenees are tackling huge forest fires. In central western Portugal, several villages had to be evacuated. Over the weekend, 6 people were reported injured, while 6,200 hectares of forest burned. On the Spanish-French border near Portbou, 130 people were evacuated due to approaching fires. The blaze destroyed about 20 hectares in just 3 hours and spread rapidly. On Sunday, firefighters reported they had the fire under control.
At least 18 people have been confirmed dead and 16 are still missing after a powerful landslide last Thursday in a mountainous region of Georgia. The worst affected area was around Shovi, 140 kilometers northwest of the capital Tbilisi. Buildings, bridges and roads around the resort were destroyed in the district, which is dotted with cottages and small hotels. Around 400 emergency workers, firefighters, police and volunteers are involved in the rescue operations. Local residents have rallied to help with the rescue operation.
You see how everybody is mobilized, everybody comes here, everybody wants to be part of it, so it's a huge motivation to see that people are coming, so you want to come as well and do something for everybody.
According to the preliminary findings of Georgia's Environment Agency, a rock avalanche crashed into a glacier, causing part of it to collapse. This may have caused the water trapped under the glacier to flow out. The accumulated mass then began to accelerate rapidly in the riverbed of the gorge, destroying everything in its path.
ჭალაკალაპოტის ზონებში, როდესაც დღესაც სახლებს ვაშენებთ, ეხლა კალაპოტში იყო ეს ტურბაზა, ძველ თავის ამ მდინარის ძველ კალაპოტში. რა თქმა უნდა, ეს ახლა რა ადაპტაციაზეა საუბარი. ამიტომ ამას უნდა ზუსტად მიხედვა, რომ ადამიანმა თავისი საკარბი და მონაკვეთი საცხოვრისი ინფრასტრუქტურული ობიექტი მოაწყოს ისე, რომ ამ კლიმატის გლობალურ ცვლილებებს გაუძლოს.
Rescue operations are continuing and the government's investigating any possible violations of safety regulations in the area.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday hailed the country's air force and its defence against Russian missiles and drones. Addressing soldiers on Ukrainian Air Force Day, Zelensky praised Western military support and claimed Moscow had failed to destroy Kyiv's military branch despite recent strikes against its air bases and grain terminals.
Ми зробимо все, щоб український повітряний щит ставав тільки міцнішим. Саме тут, саме в нашому небі, можемо довести, що терор програє. Всі разом можемо це довести. Всі партнери. Дуже важливо, відповідальна позиція кожного з партнерів щодо постачання систем ППО і ракет до них. Повний захист від терору потрібен тут, щоб потім не довелось думати, як захистити від нього ще й інші народи.
Russia has accused Kyiv of shelling infrastructure in its controlled territory. Moscow-appointed officials in the occupied region published photos purporting to show damage to the Chonhar road bridge linking mainland Ukraine to Crimea. Meanwhile, delegates from some 40 countries concluded 2 days of peace talks in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. The Kyiv-organised meetings drew to a close on Sunday without any concrete proposals, aside from vowing to continue discussions.
Thousands of people showing support for coup leaders in Niger gathered in Niamey in defiance of an ultimatum by ECOWAS to restore democracy. A deadline by the regional bloc passed at midnight, and with the threat of military action if the demands weren't met, Niger closed its national airspace. Niger's presidential guard ousted and held democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum in the coup on the 26th of July. ECOWAS immediately imposed sanctions on Niger and gave General Abdurrahman Chiani, the coup leader, 1 week to restore Bazoum to power or face the potential use of force. Chiani has vowed to respond immediately to any foreign intervention.
Taking to the streets to show their support for Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who's been arrested and jailed. Hundreds of people showed up for the march on Sunday in Muzaffarabad, the capital of Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Khan had spent the night in a high-security prison outside Islamabad after being arrested at his home. The court had handed him a 3-year sentence for corruption on Saturday, a development that could end his future in politics. The Philippines government has summoned the Chinese ambassador to protest over an incident in which a Chinese Coast Guard vessel appeared to fire a water cannon at a Filipino boat. The exchange happened in waters around Second Thomas Shoal, an atoll in the Spratly Islands claimed by both countries. Filipino authorities say the Chinese action endangered their crew.
The National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea, led by National Security Advisor Eduardo M. Año, strongly condemns the aggressive, dangerous, and unlawful actions by the Chinese Coast Guard and Chinese maritime militia vessels against Philippine-chartered supply boats and Philippine Coast Guard vessels who were undertaking a regular rotation and resupply mission in Ayungin Shoal last Saturday, August 5, 2023.
Beijing claims almost all of the South China Sea, a vital global trade route. It's ignored a 2016 international court ruling that its assertion has no legal basis.
Extreme weather in the form of Typhoon Khanun is forcing the evacuation of tens of thousands of scouts at the World Jamboree in South Korea. Officials were struggling to find appropriate temporary accommodation in community halls and educational facilities around the Seoul area, as more than 1,000 vehicles were mobilized to move the teenagers to safety ahead of the expected storm.
이번 계획은 태풍이 내습할 경우 전라북도가 영향권에 들게 됨에 따라 잼버리 영지 운영에 어려움이 예상되어 8월 6일 어제 대통령께서 정부 차원의 대책 마련을 지시함에 따라 마련되었습니다. 이번 대피 계획에는 세계 연맹 및 각국 대표단의 우려와 요청도 반영하였습니다.
The storm threat comes after days of intense heat that forced thousands, including US and British scouts, to abandon the gathering. A number of young people had to be treated for heat-related ailments.
Described as a cultural coming together in Hungary, the 16th Devil's Den Cultural Festival has been held in the south of the country. The 5-day event was organised in 2 villages, offering more than 500 events, theatre performances, literary events, art, family events and concerts. It's not known for its unbridled frenzy, more its intimacy and tranquility.
Azon barátokat, de barátok nélkül is meg fogja találni a helyét. Mindig fog találni valami olyan programot, ahol ő el tudja magát foglalni, és a koncertek is isteniek.
The festival, also known as Catalan or Cauldron, carries on this sense of freedom and spirituality. It features its own Indian reservation for internal contemplation.
Összegyűjteném az összes szót, ami elhangzik 5 nap alatt itt, és annak tanulja a fák és a felhők és a fű, amiknek semmi köze ahhoz a, hát szerintem nem jó, lebutított, vidéket tekintve elszegényedett helyzethez.
16 éve indult útjára az Ördögkatlan Fesztivál. Az évek alatt a körülmények változtak, sőt nehezebbek lettek. Ez a közösség azonban évről évre bizonyítja, hogy mennyire fontos kicsit elszökni, elbújni a hétköznapok elől. Ilyen meghitt helyszíneken, mint az mögöttem is látható. Kónya Rita, Euronews, Ördögkatlan Fesztivál, Nagyharsány.
England scraped through to the quarter-finals of the Women's World Cup on Monday after nudging out Nigeria on penalties. The game ended 0-0 after regulation and extra time, with the European champions eventually winning the shootout 4-2. The Lionesses will next take on either Jamaica or Colombia and will have to make do without their star player Lauren James, who was handed a red card in the 87th minute. Elsewhere, Australia also advanced after a convincing 2-0 triumph over Denmark. Caitlin Ford opened the scoring before Hayley Raso secured the win with a clinical finish in the 70th minute. The co-hosts will next battle it out with either France or Morocco on Saturday.